welcome to Criterion Watch. I'm your host, Jonathan Mooney. I'm here with...
Paul A. presents known as the Moo Cow. Moo.
All right. We're going to let Paul take it over here because this is his pick of the month.
All right, so for Criterion Watch this month, we are doing Bruce Beresford's 1980 movie called Breaker Morant. It's an Australian film about the misadventures of several Australian soldiers who are caught up in all kinds of problems in South Africa during the Boer War. And it's a fantastic film, fantastic drama. Not without little elements of comedy as well, but mostly it's very, very bittersweet, and it's just an exceptionally well written and acted and directed film. It's one of my favorites from that period. So, and this was the first time you'd seen this movie, wasn't it?
Yes, yes. It's the first time. I'd never even heard of it.
Oh yeah, it's a great film. Where this fits in as far as Australian film goes, Australians had this really nice run of great films that came out starting around, I would say 1975, 76, with Picnic at Hanging Rock, which was Peter Weir's film. Mm-hmm. And from there on out, I mean, you go right into...
It's also another Criterion.
Yeah, that's a great film. And then you go right into My Brilliant Career, it's 1979, and George Miller's first Road Warrior, Mad Max.
Mad Max.
And then you've got Peter Weir again in 1981 with Gallipoli, which is one of my all-time favorite movies of all time. And you've got The Road Warrior, which is the second George Miller film, and Man from Snowy River, which is also George Miller. They had this great run of fabulous films from the 70s, late 70s into the mid-80s, which probably culminated in Crocodile Dundee, which everybody loved. You know, it was like a big thing.
But
I wouldn't consider it a great film.
But do you think that's what...
Yeah, you know, it's just like everything else. Once Hollywood gets hold of it, then it all kind of goes away. But, you know, then there's still a thriving film industry in Australia. But this was kind of the golden time for Australia back then. And Bruce Beresford, Peter Weir, and George Miller are kind of like the big three from that period. And Bruce Beresford, he's probably the oldest of the bunch. He'd been making movies back in the 70s for quite a while. And then this is the movie that really sort of put him on the map, and it got nominated for an Academy Award for Best Writing for an Adapted Screenplay. And the writing in the thing is just fantastic. It's just really, really, really good. And so it's a drama, and it is starring Edward Woodward, who's one of my favorite actors. He is playing the actual lead character, the Breaker, Harry Morant. And then there's the guy playing George Whitten, who's kind of the young guy. He's sort of just kind of following orders and doing what he can. And then there's Bryant Brown, whom you might remember back in the 80s was, you know, this was his first film. He was in FX and then the follow-up FX2 and a bunch of other Hollywood movies too. This was his debut, and he's playing Hancock, the kind of the rough and tumble black sheep of the group.
I liked him.
Right, he was really good. And then Jack Thompson is playing the lawyer who's trying to help them out. Jack Thompson is an old veteran of all kinds of movies, especially Australian films. So the movie is just loaded, and it's kind of a mix. It's like, you know, at the one hand, it's kind of like a courtroom drama, but at the other hand, it's got a lot of action. It's
a war movie.
It's a war movie, and I think you even mentioned you thought it was a lot more violent than you were expecting it to be.
Well, I didn't know anything about it, so I was like, oh.
It also has, in my opinion, elements of Kurosawa's Rashomon, where you are getting sort of bits and pieces of a story from different perspectives without really knowing exactly how the truth is, because it looks different from different levels. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very cool in that way. And of course, it's very, very bittersweet because, as it turns out, yeah, I mean, it's based on a true story, and these poor suckers, you know, got the thin end of the wedge, and were pretty much scapegoated for the empire, just as the book said that it would. But, you know, fabulously done. Can't recommend it enough. So this was your first time seeing it. What did you think?
I thought it was fun. I mean, it was an entertaining movie. At the beginning, it was a little slow. I think I told you that. The beginning had maybe it was just the day, and I was just exhausted anyway. But I was already like, oh, good. And there was one question you had asked, like you said, "Are you awake?" And at that point, I actually was. But before, if you had asked me that, I would have been like, whoa, what? You know, like, because I wasn't asleep, but my eyes kept going, and it wasn't the movie's fault necessarily. I didn't know it was going to be courtroom drama at all, like most of the movie. I thought that was just going to be in the beginning, and then they would go back into the war, you know, or whatever, and that's all we'd see. But no, it was half courtroom drama and half, like I had said, reminded me kind of a little bit of A Few Good Men, which I believe, you know, probably took a little bit from this movie. Ron Howard, right, did that, or no, Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner directed that, and wonderful, you know, movie. But this, you know, this felt like that too. And I mean, you know, there's a couple of scenes, like there's one scene where the guy was leading the witness, and I could pick up on that. It was very easy, you know, right? And I was like, hey, he's leading the witness, and then the next guy says he's leading the witness,
right?
And I was just like, oh my goodness, you know, maybe I should write courtroom
Right.
dramas.
It was funny because, you know, the guy is obviously leading the witness, and he's telling him, you know, well, how did you feel about this, you know, how did you think the guy felt about this? And he said he couldn't come up with the word. He said, did he feel agitated? And giving him the word. And that's when you and the other guys like, he's leading the witness. And he says, I'm sorry, I'll rephrase that. How do you think he was feeling? He says, agitated. And it was just like, of course, it's not fair. You just gave him the word.
You just gave him the word, yeah.
Oh, boo.
Yeah, but it was funny.
That whole, and yeah, so there's little bits of black comedy in there too, but it just underscores the general unfairness of the whole thing and just the tragedy that happens to these poor guys. And you get to know them. And even though, you know, it's tragedy, it takes its pains to make sure you understand that they're not angels either. You know, they are people who, as the movie points out, are ordinary men caught up in extraordinary circumstances who do what are probably considered barbaric and horrible things in the calm light of day, and now they're asked to perform those things during the heat of battle, and they have to do what they have to do.
Right.
You know, so and you know, how do you expect people in those circumstances to conduct themselves? You know, it's crazy.
Right.
So it's really, really good. There are a lot of hard-hitting themes that this movie, you know, goes at full tilt. It doesn't pull any punches, and it does it in a very, very convincing, dramatic way without being melodramatic. You know, in my opinion, there wasn't a soppy moment as I saw it, and it's really cool because everybody gets fair treatment and everybody seems pretty well balanced. Even the one Boer who's kind of like, you know, he's sort of helping them out. He's a translator and a scout, and he seems very eager to help. And then he gets pulled into the courtroom, and all of a sudden he's trying to change his story to save his own neck, and he does. And everybody, you know, they all call him out on it, but it doesn't matter. And then later on, he ends up getting killed because, you know, it was really a nasty, dirty, horrible war, unfortunately. And to give anybody who doesn't quite understand about the history of this, the Boer War is considered one of the forerunners of modern military, sort of modern warfare, in like the way that the Civil War did with the United States. You know, 30, 40 years down the road, this happened in South Africa for European theater. And it was, again, they talked about this might be one of the earliest times where you have people and, you know, soldiers in uniform fighting against guerrillas who are not in uniform. You can't tell who's an enemy and who's not until they're shooting you, which is now a much more of a modern problem. And, you know, today we still have problems with that. But back then, nobody really knew how to approach that. And so, you know, the guy, Lord Kitchener, created this special military unit, paramilitary unit of volunteers to go out and face the Boer commandos on their own terms. And that was fine when they were trying to win the war, but all of a sudden, when there's a chance for peace and when it looks like Germany is about to complicate things and jump into the war and have an excuse to do that, all of a sudden now they want to stop doing what they were told to do and erase all aspects of that and quietly put an end to the war and just get rid of the people, and no one's gonna care if we sacrifice these two people if it ends up stopping the war. And it's of course that might be great for overall, but it's not very nice for the two people involved.
Right.
So yeah, it's got a lot of stuff. There's a lot of depth to it. And it's not an easy film to digest, but I thought it was really, really well done, and the acting especially helps it along, and the writing as well.
There was some hard scenes to get through, because not in a bad way or anything, you know, but there were some scenes that were a little graphic, or you know, like I had said before, like it was a lot more violent, but the violent was grisly, you know, like it wasn't, and it felt real and disturbing at times, especially since the biggest thing about it was they had performed a lot of executions on these people who had like basically murdered and mutilated one of their people, so they just want to go and, you know, like they're kind of taking their revenge in a way. And it, like, we see that, and we see like these very violent executions and the process, and it just like it kind of at times they even were very, very good about it. Like there was one point where they did the execution, but they kind of panned away from the execution, and you could kind of hear like the wind rustling, you know, or whatever. And I was just like, that was classy how they handled that. But it was, I mean, most of the other ones that they showed, like they would show from far away. I don't even know if that's an artistic like filming thing, or if that was an MPAA, like kind of like we can get away with showing this if it's far away, you know?
Yeah, well, again, this was made in Australia, so I don't think they had to worry about that as much. I think it's more of an artistic choice, because he probably didn't want it to be too much. You know, I mean, there are certain times when, you know, he will pan, instead of seeing the action, he will pan to the person who's seeing it, and you're going to react to their face, and you're going to know what's happening. You don't have to see it happening.
I mean, you can hear.
You hear it, and you see by their expressions of their face what's going on.
So it was, you know, it was interesting. It was, I mean, I don't know. I think, like you said, the whole idea of having it from different people's perspectives and kind of showing that, and not knowing exactly what happened, because there was a great moment. There's gonna be spoilers in this, because we can't help it. But there was this one moment that I just absolutely loved, where what's the guy's name with the mustache? The Hancock.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Hancock, who was questioned about where his whereabouts at a certain spot. So he told them like he was seeing these two women, you know, at that time, or
Boer
whatever.
women.
What?
Boer women.
Boer women.
Women for the enemy.
Yeah, and he was like friends with them, and he wanted to check up on them, and he was obviously entertaining.
Yeah.
As they said, one of the guys is like, "You are, you know, what do you mean by entertaining?"
So are you singing to them?
Yeah, singing to them. I was like,
I was
do you really need him to spell it out for you?
I know.
But, so he was seeing them, but, and then they said they don't want to bring, you know, with the lightness of it, they don't want to bring those women on trial, which, you know, those papers could have been written by anybody, you know, could have been written by their lawyer, you know, and said, like, you know, these are from these women, you know, there was no...
Well, there were official depositions, so you have to assume that they were probably signed in front of a judge or in front of an advocate or someone to make it official for them to accept it. But, you know, the point was is that they were trying to do this in a way that didn't have to bring them publicly into the trial, A, because they're married women and that's going to cause a scandal, but also B, you could see that there were people who were being executed for helping out the English, and that would put them in serious danger if it looked like they were, you know, fraternizing with an English soldier. So different levels of danger going on with that particular moment.
So, but then you actually see what happened for real, you know, and
Right.
which is he actually did kill the missionary guy that, you know, that, you know, you're not supposed to kill someone who isn't a part of this whole war, you know, and that was the biggest thing, was like he wasn't a part of the war, and you know what I mean, like.
Well, except that he probably was. He probably was transferring information and saying things, and you know, and again, that's just part of it, is that this was a dirty, filthy war, and you know, there were
right,
all
but
sorts
there
of
was
people.
no, yeah, but then that's supposed to be handled by like arresting or something.
Right, he should have been brought to trial.
Yeah, brought to trial, not just murdered on the spot. So, you know, that was handled wrong, and they were right in the process in a way, but more like, you know, that they were wrong. So
Right.
it's a very confusing thing. And then at the end, the two guys are convicted, you know, and sentenced to death. And then the one guy that was there, we forgot to talk about him, George.
Yeah,
I
the
think
young
George,
guy.
young guy. He was apparently the only thing that was, you know, that he had done that was he was on trial for was he had actually murdered somebody in self-defense because the guy ran at him
Right.
when he was supposed to get executed. So he had never actually didn't murder any of the other people. He didn't actually pull the triggers for any of the other people or whatever, set the whole thing up. But he had murdered that guy, so they gave him a lot, you know, originally they were going to give him a death sentence, but they pardoned him and gave him, like, I think it's a life.
Yeah,
or
yeah, it was
something.
funny because the guy is like, you've been sentenced to death. But Lord Kitchener, in the beautifulness of his heart, has decided to commute your sentence to, you know, life imprisonment and, you know, penal servitude. And he looks at him like, oh, how wonderful. Am I supposed to get on my knees and kiss your ass for that?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and then he goes and he, like, sits there in silence waiting for the next guy or whatever, which was the main guy, Morant, and who finds out he was sentenced to death. And then, you know, and with which we were on, like, I was on suspense because I hadn't seen it, so you knew exactly what was going to happen, but I was just like, oh God, did he get, like, life too? Did he get, no, he got death.
Well, and it sets you up because, you know, it does follow what happened in the trial, what really happened, and two of the judges recommended clemency and even sent them champagne. So you got to figure something good is actually going to happen out of all this.
Well, good thing happened. I mean, that guy got life, but
Yeah.
the other two guys got screwed, you know, and everything.
And of course, when the truth comes out, you know, and it turns out he doesn't actually get life. He's released after 3 years. And then he's the guy, George Whitten is actually the guy who writes the book called Scapegoats of an Empire, which later gets turned into a play and then later becomes the screenplay for this film.
Oh, well,
So-
good. Well, I mean, and I liked his character because, like, he was the moral guy of the whole group because
Right.
most of the time he was like, and you know, more that you said that now it makes, you know, now it makes perfect sense because, like, he's kind of the voice for the audience of saying,
Right.
this isn't right. What we were doing is wrong, and you know, even Hancock and Morant are both going, well, we did what we had to do. And so it was wonderful, but it is one of those movies you have to pay attention to it. You have to.
Absolutely.
I mean, like I said, in the beginning it was a little hard, but like once things started like really cooking and the violence started happening and all these things, I was awake. It woke me up, and I was like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah, this is not a popcorn film. This is not something you go there just to be sort of mindlessly entertained. There's a lot of thought that's been put into this film, and there's a lot going on. So you really do need to sort of pay attention and approach it and appreciate it for what it is. I was just going to say, I thought Bruce Beresford did a really, really excellent job with his direction. His shots were fabulous. It looked beautiful. I love the courtroom, how he has it set up so that the one camera angle is looking down on the whole process.
Well, I noticed things that I don't normally notice in movies, and that's the shots for certain things. Like when somebody is like looking up, you know, the camera's looking up and the person's looking down. They did a lot of those.
Right.
And it was more intimidating, you know, you didn't know what was going on necessarily. Things like that. He did a wonderful job in the direction. At first, I was wondering about that because I was like, why is this a Criterion movie? Like, if it's set in the courtroom a lot, you know, it's like there's not going to be a lot of cool shots. No, there was some really cool shots inside the courtroom. And that shocked me because usually you don't get that. Usually, like, even just to bring back up A Few Good Men, that was shot as if it was a play, you know, right? Like most of the courtroom scenes were shot like a play. That wasn't very, I mean, I love Rob Reiner to death, but I don't think he's I don't think he could have directed this movie to like the best that Beresford did. Like that guy just directed a great job. I think this was a wonderful movie.
Right. The courtroom scenes were not static at all, and he did a really good job too. For his shots, because there are a lot of beautiful exterior shots, beautiful shots, even during the battle scenes.
The sun,
sun.
Oh
my goodness. So the contrast between the horrible reality of what's going on in the film with the war and everything and the executions and these guys might get killed, set up against the fact that there are these beautiful sunsets, these beautiful shots, big, wide open, deep depth of field shots of the Transvaal and the hills. With people on horseback coming out of the mists.
Very Lawrence of Arabia, like David Lean style, like directing. And we watched the DVD. We didn't even watch the Blu-ray because he doesn't have the Blu-ray yet. But, I mean, I'm sure he'll get it at some point. But if it is on Blu-ray, I don't know. It's on Blu-ray.
Criterion has it.
So, you know, when you get that, I'm sure you'll watch that. But, like, it's amazing on DVD. And it looks great. I mean... I don't know if it's just my TV is made like that too, you know, or whatever, but...
It's got to be the TV.
It's the DVD, because, like, the DVD just...
It's a high-quality DVD. You're going to get that from Criterion. Even if you don't get the Blu-ray, the darn DVDs are really good, too. You know.
So, I guess, what are our final thoughts on it? You know?
Well, you know, I wanted to talk a little tiny bit about Bruce Beresford, too, because, you know, he went on to a lot of success in the 80s and 90s. He did Tender Mercies, which actually got an Academy Award nomination, and he did a movie that I love called Black Robe. It's a very sort of underrated film that not a lot of people saw, but it was really well done. That was set in Canada. He also did,
heard of it.
Crimes of the Heart. He did, of course, Driving Miss Daisy, which did win the Academy Award. And it's funny because he even said, you know, he didn't think that movie was particularly well directed, but he thought it was well written, so that's why it kind of deserved it. I was never a fan, frankly.
You know, that's the only movie that he's listed that I've actually like seen. And I saw it when I was a kid or whatever, when I was younger, and I enjoyed it. I don't know, but it was. I think it's one of those movies that like it was an Oscar like, you know, fodder. Like it was something that was gonna win an Oscar. You put old woman and old man together in a movie,
and especially that old man is Morgan Freeman.
And he's a wonderful actor. You know if he says he's not wonderfully directed, he's wrong though, because like the acting is wonderful, and you can't get that unless you have a great director. I hate to say.
You know, Bruce Beresford has made something like 30 movies in the span of 50 years, so he's definitely a veteran, and he's done a lot of good stuff.
Did he pass away or anything?
No, he's still around.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, 2016 he did a movie called Mr. Church. I've not seen it.
Mr. Church?
Yeah.
I think I've heard of that.
But, yeah, he also directed, I don't know if you remember a movie called Aria back in 1987. It was kind of an anthology film of different artsy kind of stuff. He did a part
That's
for
probably
that.
why I didn't see it.
And he's done a lot of other stuff too. He's done a lot of good things. In fact, he's done other things as well. He also directed a number of operas, and he got involved in that. So it's one of the reasons why.
Yeah, I mean, and see the artistic thing. We were talking about that earlier.
But you can see why, you know, for a while there, he you know, may not have come up as far as the big important Hollywood films go. But he's an excellent director, and like I said, he's one of the big three that came out of Australia in the 70s and 80s that, you know, still around, fortunately. So always love to see if he has another movie coming out.
All right, well, maybe we'll check that out or something at some point.
That would be cool. And of course, poor Edward Woodward did pass away. He's again one of my favorite actors. He's marvelous in this. He does a lot of singing in it, actually. And on the Criterion disc, there are, amongst all the other really cool extra features, there are interviews with Bruce Beresford and with Brian Brown and with Edward Woodward that you really need to check out. And Brian Brown especially was really good. Like I said, this was his first film, and you know, he really enjoyed it.
That's Hancock, right?
Right, he's the guy who played Hancock.
He was great. Because I remember you were telling me about him before, because I noticed him for the mustache. Well, I mean, I didn't notice him, like I didn't know who he was, but I like he's got a very like distinctive look in the movie
Right.
with the mustache and everything. A lot of these people have these like really creepy looking mustaches that they can't get. They can't do those today.
Well, I'm
Like,
surprised you didn't pick up on FX because that was like the big
Yeah,
Hollywood thing. It happened around the same time as Crocodile Dundee, when in the mid '80s, when the Hollywood went nuts for everything Australian.
I have effects on like VHS
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, but I don't, or maybe even DVD, but I don't. I'm not. I mean, I just haven't watched it. You know, it's just one of those
Yeah, it
things
was
that
kinda
I've got FX and FX2, and I just haven't watched them yet.
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing, you know. These non-Hollywood movies that get made in other countries are fabulous, and then the Hollywood decides to make their version with their kinds of people, and it's kind of meh.
Yeah, well,
You know.
I mean, you have to accept that Hollywood makes, like they do that with Japan movies and Korean movies
Right.
and everywhere, like Hollywood steals ideas from everything because, and then we try to make it just as good and it never works out. But, one day maybe Hollywood will do it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. As long as there's money in it, that's really what is kind of.
Well, right, and I mean that's the thing with Hollywood is it's all about what's already out there. That's why like books get picked up by movies because if they already have readers watching it, then they're totally
Right.
excited.
And let's face it, all of these great Australian directors ended up making movies for Hollywood at some point because that's what happens. And you make your movies that you want to make in your country, and then you come to Hollywood, and then you're hired on to direct this movie. You generally don't get to go there with enough clout to sort of have your own thing. Very few directors get to sort of do that. As a matter of fact, you look at somebody like Kubrick, who was directing Hollywood stuff and had enough clout that he said, you know what, I'm sick of dealing with your crap. I'm going to make my movies the way I want, and went to England and just made his own studio and just made his own movies the way he wanted. You know?
Except he also did Eyes Wide Shut.
I like Eyes Wide Shut.
Okay, just saying.
All right, yeah, well.
Well, that's and that was the thing when he was telling me Breaker Moran, I had never heard of it. I didn't look into it. Thank God I didn't look into it because I don't know if I would have seen some spoilers or anything like that. And I kind of came in with it with fresh eyes, and I was pleasantly surprised. And it's not that he doesn't have good taste. It's that we have different taste. A lot of times. So. He likes movies that I don't like, and I like movies he don't like.
And like I said, Australia put out this really great string of fabulous movies. So I imagine I'll probably pull out one or two more at some point because certainly Peter Weir's Gallipoli is another one of my absolute favorite movies. I don't know if you've seen that or not with Mel Gibson.
We'll probably do that for
great.
Film Freaks at some point, I'm
absolutely.
sure. So yeah, we also do this thing called Film Freaks. So you may see some Criterion movies on Film Freaks as well.
Sure.
Or movies at least that have been on Criterion, because Criterion has released a lot of really good movies that they haven't actually put on like Blu-ray
And
or
Picnic for
even
Hanging
DVD.
Rock is definitely one of them, and I definitely recommend that one.
Yeah, well, I thought I had that. I thought I bought it with my 50, movies, and I didn't, and I'm like mad, and so I'm gonna buy it because it actually has the full book inside the Blu-ray. So I think you get, people should definitely check that one out too. But I'm sure we'll do that at some point or talk about it at least or whatever, because it's like a classic kind of
Absolutely.
movie. So if it's not for Criterion, it'll probably be for Film Freaks, because that's what we're gonna end up doing. Is we're doing like Criterion is just Criterion, but Film Freaks is everything.
Right.
Everything good. It has to be a movie that we've all agreed, or at least me and Paul have agreed, is kind of a classic film that people can watch or whatever.
Maybe when we do Australian films, I'll have a Foster's and you can have some Vegemite.
I don't know what that is.
It's like
You don't have to
it's like a hazelnut spread, except
Oh.
it's made from the bottom of beer mush. It's gross.
No, I don't want anything that has beer in it. Sorry. No. Anyway, well, I'll have a whatever an Australian coffee is.
All right. Well, I guess final thoughts. If you haven't seen this film, excuse me, you definitely should check it out. Like I said, even the DVD version is beautiful and has all kinds of great extras on there, all kinds of good commentary, a nice little featurette, and I believe it even has a little featurette movie discussing sort of the
History.
the history of that particular war and what led up to it and what happened.
Yeah.
So definitely check it out.
Definitely check that out. I would say like that would be my final thought too. Is like basically this is just an interesting movie. I didn't know anything about the war. I didn't know anything about the characters, the actors. Like these are all new people to me. So it was just like going in fresh, you know, and kind of seeing a little bit of history, you know, without it being like blatantly yelled at me, you know, or anything. It's very subtly kind of spread out and told, and kind of reminds me of all the ones like Bridge on the River Kwai, or you know, these war movies that were like, you know, really well done, and everything.
And again, it's, you know, I mentioned this before. There's this sort of more, not even so subtle subtext regarding Australian film and the fact that, you know, Australia was a colony of England for quite a while, and politically speaking, a lot of Australians felt that England, you know, took Australia for granted and used them in a number of different ways, as a lot of ex-colonial nations feel. And sort of this is their way of exploring it, because a very similar theme happens in Peter Weir's Gallipoli and in several other films too. So there's a lot of depth to these films, and they really should be checked out.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for checking this out. I'll be picking the next one next month. I think what we're doing right now so far is, I guess this is the first Friday the second Friday. The first Friday was what did we just release? Was it not the What the Fuck Friday? Was it?
I don't remember anymore. We do so many videos.
We do so many. Oh, it's a Film Freaks. So Film Freaks is the first Friday. First Friday. This is the second Friday. The third Friday is just an Indie Film Cafe review, and then the fourth Friday is What the Fuck Friday. So you get a What the Fuck Friday in the last Friday. But a Criterion Watch will be is the second Friday. So the next one will be the second Friday of the month and everything.
Okay.
So
sounds good.
It's a great, you know, it's a good way to keep your Fridays, you know, banging, things happening.
Absolutely. We will pick you out a fabulous, fabulous Criterion movie for you to check out.
Yeah, definitely. I have like 50 of them so far. He's got a bunch. So, and plus, and then July, we're gonna, you know, the whole sale is going on, so we can purchase those.
Let's hope.
What do you mean, let's hope?
Well, unfortunately, Barnes & Noble just got sold to somebody else, and we don't know what their future's going to be, because they've had to close a bunch of stores. So
Oh, Jesus.
I know.
I didn't even know about that.
We got. Yeah, I read about that the other day. So
Hey.
hopefully it'll still be going on.
Hopefully, if not,
But
I'm sure they'll find another store or something.
Aren't you on Criterion?
We are. I am on Criterion, but Criterion Channel does not have everything. Unfortunately, I wish they did, you know, but they don't have everything. So, you know. Anyway, thank you guys for checking this out, and tune in next month for a whole new Criterion Watch. We'll see what I have for us. I'll have something good. I like, that's the plan, is to always have something. I don't want to buy us, you know, get us something that's not going to be a movie that deserves to be Criterion. You know.
Well, there are almost very few movies that Criterion has taken.
There's a couple I didn't like, you know, but that you might like still anyway. Like In-Laws. Ooh. You can have my. If I could. I don't want to give away my copies, because I have a whole. I want to have as many. I want the collection. But I really did not like that movie. I didn't like the other one too. The one with the people in the party. You know, after the death of their friend, they go and party at a house, basically. Lawrence Kasdan movie. Big. Was it Big something? God. You're like, now you guys are like going, oh my God, I can't believe he doesn't know that title. And
I can't remember.
It started with a B. God damn it.
Big Cow.
No. I can't remember it. Anyway, sorry.
Belly Button.
No, it started with a B. I think. I could be completely wrong. The Big Chill.
Oh, The Big Chill. Yeah.
Ugh, Big Chill.
I'm not a big fan of that either.
Yeah, neither am I. And I don't know why it was on
It's
Criterion.
kind of a big snooze.
Yeah, it's a big snooze, and it was kind of like it literally put me to sleep. And I thought it was going to be funnier than it was.
You know, it spoke to a lot of boomers, I think.
That might be the thing. I don't know. So
It's a boomer movie.
And that's
Sorry, boomers.
And hey, you know what? If you like it, great. You know, I'm not saying that you've got bad taste. I'm just saying I don't like it. I thought I would. I was excited, you know. And the in-laws, people were telling me they thought it was hilarious, and they had like a couple scenes I thought were funny, but like, and I love Peter Falk generally, but I just felt like the movie was just you know, boring, and I don't know.
I like that one better than The Big Chill, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, no, I agree. The In-Laws was a lot. I could watch the whole In-Laws and not be bored.
Right.
I wasn't bored by it. I mean, maybe I was. I just said I was bored, but I wasn't like, you know, I wasn't like, okay, let's change the channel.
Well,
I was like, let me finish this.
The good thing about Criterion is that they do highlight a lot of foreign films too. So it's a really good gateway to get into some of the best films from other countries, and you know, Japan and Korea and Finland and Russia and France and Australia,
Italy,
and all
everywhere.
kinds of things. Yeah, so you know, it's a great way to sort of take a trip around the world and see how other people, other than you know, Americans in Hollywood, are making films, and there's just a great tradition of film in a lot of these countries. So definitely check them out.
Definitely.
And
All right, well,
we're going to show you as many as we can.
On that note, have a great one, guys. Enjoy your time, and see you in a month. Bye.